I'm Sarah Martinez, 28, and I just walked into my childhood home to find my cousin Jake sprawled across my old bed, controller in hand, surrounded by energy drink cans and pizza boxes. My posters were gone, my furniture rearranged, and everything I'd left behind was stuffed into garbage bags in the corner like unwanted donations. The room that held 16 years of my memories had been transformed into his personal gaming paradise, complete with a 75-inch TV mounted where my mirror used to hang. But here's the thing. By the time Christmas morning rolled around, every single one of my cousins was begging to hang out in my space instead of his. What I did with that musty basement turned into the most talked-about transformation in our family's history, and suddenly, everyone wanted to know how the quiet cousin became the coolest one in the house. Before we carry on, please hit the subscribe button and let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Walking through the front door of my parents' house should have felt like coming home, but instead, it felt like stepping into someone else's life. The familiar scent of my mom's cinnamon candles mixed with something foreign. Something that definitely wasn't part of my childhood memories. As I wheeled my suitcase across the hardwood floors I'd learned to walk on, I could hear the aggressive sounds of some first-person shooter game echoing from upstairs. "Sarah, honey, you're here." Mom appeared from the kitchen, flour dusting her apron, and a slightly guilty expression flickering across her face. She wiped her hands nervously before pulling me into a hug that felt more apologetic than welcoming. "Where should I put my stuff?" I asked, gesturing toward the stairs that led to what had always been my sanctuary. The pause was telling. Mom glanced toward the ceiling where the gaming sounds were getting louder, then back at me with that look I remembered from childhood when she was about to deliver news I wouldn't like. "Well, sweetie, Jake needed a place to stay while he's getting back on his feet, and you know how small the guest room is. Your father and I thought since you have your own place now in the city, and you hardly visit anymore." "Shh, shh, Pow." Her voice trailed off as if hoping I'd fill in the blanks and make this easier for her. I stood there processing what she wasn't quite saying directly. Jake, my 25-year-old cousin who'd dropped out of college twice and couldn't hold a job for more than 6 months, had been given my childhood bedroom. The room where I'd spent countless nights studying for the SATs, where I'd cried over my first heartbreak, where I'd planned my entire future during those crucial teenage years. "So he's in my room," I said, more statement than question. "It's just temporary." Mom rushed to explain. "He's really trying this time, Sarah. He's got interviews lined up, and your Aunt Linda is beside herself with worry. You know how family is." Family. The word that was supposed to solve everything, justify anything, and make me swallow my feelings with a smile. I did know how family was, which is exactly why I was standing in the foyer with my suitcase, nodding like this was perfectly reasonable instead of marching upstairs to reclaim what was mine. "Where am I supposed to sleep?" I asked, keeping my voice level despite the irritation building in my chest. "The couch is actually quite comfortable," Mom said quickly. "Or we could set up an air mattress in the living room. It'll be like camping." Camping. In my own childhood home. While my freeloading cousin enjoyed my memory foam mattress and the view of the oak tree I used to climb out onto during my rebellious phase. The sound of heavy footsteps on the stairs interrupted my internal monologue, and Jake appeared in his typical uniform of wrinkled basketball shorts and a gaming headset around his neck. He'd put on weight since I'd last seen him, and there was a permanent indent on his forehead from where his headset usually sat. "Oh, hey, Sarah," he said with the casual tone of someone who definitely wasn't about to offer to give up the room he'd colonized. "Thanks for letting me crash in your old room. It's got way better Wi-Fi than the guest room." Letting him. as if I'd had a choice in the matter. "No problem," I heard myself saying, because that's what good daughters and cousins do. We smile and accommodate and pretend that our feelings don't matter as much as everyone else's convenience. Jake wandered toward the kitchen, already absorbed in his phone, while Mom continued her nervous chattering about dinner plans and who was coming for Christmas Eve. I half-listened while calculating how many days I'd committed to staying in this house that no longer felt like home. That night, lying on the living room couch with a throw pillow that smelled like the dog we'd had when I was 12, I stared at the ceiling and listened to Jake's gaming session directly above me. The sound of his voice calling out strategies and insults to his online teammates filtered through the floor, punctuated by the occasional victory whoop or frustrated groan. This was supposed to be my sanctuary time. 2 weeks away from my demanding job in digital marketing, from my cramped city apartment, from the constant pressure to network and hustle and prove myself worthy of the promotion I'd been chasing for months. Instead, I was lying on a couch in my childhood home, feeling like a guest in my own family. But as I lay there listening to Jake's gaming marathon, an idea began forming. The basement had always been unfinished, used primarily for storage and my dad's exercise equipment that collected more dust than sweat. It was a large space, probably twice the size of my old bedroom, with concrete floors and exposed ceiling beams. Most people would see it as a dreary, uninviting cave. I saw potential. The next morning, I made my way downstairs with a cup of coffee and my phone's flashlight. The basement was exactly as I remembered it, cluttered with Christmas decorations, old furniture, and boxes of memories my parents couldn't bear to throw away, but didn't want to look at regularly. But underneath all that accumulated history was a substantial space with good bones. The ceiling height was actually quite impressive, nearly 9 feet in most areas. There were 2 small ground-level windows that could let in natural light, and the far wall had rough plumbing that suggested it had once been intended for a bathroom. Most importantly, there was a separate entrance through the basement door that led directly to the backyard. I spent the morning moving boxes and measuring spaces, my mind already envisioning what this place could become. By the time my parents woke up, I had cleared a significant area and was taking notes on my phone. "What are you doing down there, honey?" Mom called from the top of the stairs. "Just looking around," I called back, not ready to share my plan until I'd figured out if it was actually feasible. The rest of the day was spent researching. I looked up flooring options, lighting solutions, and furniture that could transform a basement into a livable space. I watched YouTube videos about DIY renovations and scrolled through Pinterest boards full of industrial-chic designs that embraced exposed beams and concrete floors as features rather than flaws. Most importantly, I started calculating costs. I had savings, more than my parents probably realized. Working in the city had its financial advantages, and I'd been living below my means specifically to have options. This could be one of those options. At dinner, while Jake dominated the conversation with stories about his latest gaming achievements, I casually mentioned my day's exploration. "The basement has really good potential," I said, cutting into my mom's pot roast. "I was thinking it might be fun to fix it up a bit while I'm here." Dad perked up at this. He'd always been handy, but had never had the motivation to tackle the basement project. "What kind of fixing up are you thinking?" "Nothing too dramatic," I said, though I was already mentally planning something quite dramatic. "Maybe some basic improvements, make it more usable space." "That would be wonderful," Mom said. "We've been meaning to do something with that space for years. If you want to take it on as a project, we'd be happy to help with costs." I almost choked on my water. My parents, who had given away my childhood bedroom without consulting me, were now offering to fund my basement renovation. The irony wasn't lost on me, but I wasn't about to turn down financial support for what was rapidly becoming my master plan. Over the next few days, while Jake remained glued to his gaming setup in my former room, I threw myself into the basement project with an intensity that surprised even me. I started with the basics, cleaning and organizing, sorting through decades of accumulated family history. Each box I moved revealed more potential in the space below. I found myself working late into the night, planning and plotting. This wasn't just about having a place to sleep during my visit anymore. This was about creating something entirely my own. Something that would make a statement about who I was and what I was capable of. The first major purchase was flooring. I decided on luxury vinyl planks that looked like weathered wood but could handle basement moisture. The salesperson at the home improvement store was skeptical when I explained my timeline, but I was determined to make significant progress before Christmas. "You're planning to install 1,000 square feet of flooring in less than 2 weeks?" he asked, clearly thinking I was delusional. "I'm motivated," I told him, and arranged for delivery the next day. What followed was the most physically demanding week of my life. I rented industrial fans to address moisture concerns, then spent 12-hour days on my hands and knees installing flooring. My back ached, my knees were bruised, and my hands were raw from handling the planks. But watching the transformation happen square foot by square foot was addictive. Jake occasionally wandered down to see what I was doing, usually when he needed something from the storage area. His comments were predictably dismissive. "Lot of work for a basement," he'd say, stepping carefully around my project area. "Seems like you could just put some rugs down and call it good." I'd smile and continue working, imagining his reaction when he saw the finished product. By the end of the first week, the flooring was complete, and the space already looked dramatically different. The warm wood tones made the concrete walls look intentionally industrial rather than unfinished, and the natural light from the windows seemed brighter against the new floors. Next came the walls. I decided to embrace the industrial aesthetic rather than fight it, which meant leaving the concrete exposed, but sealing and painting it with a specialized basement paint that would prevent moisture issues while giving the walls cachet. A clean, modern look. I chose a soft gray that would make the space feel larger and more sophisticated. The painting took 3 days. 3 days of rolling gray paint onto concrete while listening to podcasts about home renovation and interior design. I was learning as I went, making mistakes and figuring out solutions, but the progress was visible and encouraging. My parents checked on me regularly, bringing sandwiches and coffee, clearly impressed by my dedication, but probably wondering if I'd lost my mind. Even they seemed surprised by how much I was accomplishing. "You know, honey," Dad said on day 4, watching me paint the final wall section, "if you keep this up, you're going to have a nicer space than any of us." That was exactly the point. The ceiling was my biggest challenge. The exposed beams and ductwork looked chaotic and unfinished, but covering them would lower the ceiling height considerably. I spent hours researching solutions before deciding to paint everything the same color as the walls, which would create a cohesive look while maintaining the industrial vibe. Painting a ceiling while standing on a ladder is nobody's idea of fun, but I was committed to the vision. I worked in sections, careful to maintain wet edges and avoid streaks. My neck was killing me, and I had paint in my hair despite wearing a hat, but watching the ceiling transform from chaotic to cohesive was worth every ache. The lighting was crucial. The single bulb that had illuminated the space before was completely inadequate for what I was creating. I installed track lighting along the main beam, complemented by floor lamps and string lights that would create ambient lighting for different moods. The difference was dramatic, transforming the space from a dingy basement into something that felt warm and inviting. Furniture was the fun part. I scoured online marketplaces for pieces that fit my budget and aesthetic. A sleek modular sofa that could be arranged different ways. A coffee table made from reclaimed wood and metal pipes. A bookshelf that doubled as a room divider. Industrial bar stools for the counter I was planning to install along one wall. Each piece was carefully chosen to maximize both style and functionality. This wasn't just going to be a place to sleep. It was going to be a place to live, to entertain, to prove a point. The bathroom was my most ambitious undertaking. The rough plumbing I'd noticed was indeed meant for a half bath, but it hadn't been connected. I hired a plumber for the technical work, but I handled the finishing touches myself. Subway tiles on the walls, a modern pedestal sink, and a toilet that looked like it belonged in a high-end hotel rather than a basement. You know this is costing more than most people spend on entire bathroom renovations, the plumber mentioned as he connected the final fixtures. I know, I said, watching him test the water pressure. But it's worth it. 2 days before Christmas Eve, I was putting the finishing touches on what had become my masterpiece. The space was unrecognizable from the cluttered storage area it had been 2 weeks earlier. The wood floors gleamed under the carefully planned lighting. The gray walls provided a sophisticated backdrop for the modern furniture I'd arranged throughout the space. The bathroom sparkled with its clean lines and quality fixtures. But the real showstopper was the entertainment area I'd created in the far corner. A 6 to 5-inch TV mounted on the wall, surrounded by a sound system that I'd spent hours calibrating. Comfortable seating arranged to create an intimate theater experience. A mini-fridge stocked with craft beer and gourmet snacks. It looked like something from a magazine spread about urban lofts, not like a basement in a suburban family home. Most importantly, it felt like mine. Every decision, every detail, every dollar spent had been my choice. After years of compromise and accommodation, I had created something that was entirely my own vision. The separate entrance meant I could come and go without disturbing anyone upstairs. I'd installed a smart lock that I could control with my phone, and the basement door opened directly to the backyard, which I'd also been improving with solar lights and outdoor furniture. On Christmas Eve morning, I made my final preparations. I'd invited my cousins over for what I was calling a basement tour, though I'd been deliberately vague about what they'd find downstairs. The official family gathering wasn't until evening, which gave me the perfect opportunity to debut my creation. Jake was the first to arrive, naturally. He'd been complaining about being bored despite having taken over my room and monopolizing the main TV for his gaming sessions. When I told him I had something cool to show him in the basement, his interest was clearly minimal. "I've seen the basement," he said, following me down the stairs. "It's just a bunch of old boxes and your dad's exercise bike. Just take a look," I said, opening the door to reveal my transformed space. The silence was immediate and gratifying. Jake stood in the doorway, mouth slightly open, taking in the dramatic change. The warm wood floors, the modern furniture, the professional quality entertainment setup, the ambient lighting that made everything look like it belonged in a boutique hotel. "Holy shit," he breathed, stepping inside to get a better look. "You did this? In 2 weeks?" "I was motivated," I said, echoing what I'd told the flooring salesperson. He wandered around the space, touching surfaces and examining details. The gaming setup in the corner was clearly drawing his attention. the high-end equipment and comfortable seating obviously superior to what he'd been using upstairs. "This is incredible," he said, settling into one of the leather recliners I'd positioned in front of the TV. "How much did this cost?" "Enough," I said, not wanting to get into specifics. But it was worth it. My other cousins arrived throughout the morning, each having the same reaction Jake had. Wide eyes, dropped jaws, and immediate recognition that what I'd created was something special. The space that had been dismissed as a dingy basement was now the coolest room in the house. "Sarah, this is amazing," my cousin Emma said, running her hands along the smooth concrete walls. "It's like something from those home renovation shows." My cousin Mike was already claiming one of the bar stools, testing the sound system and nodding approvingly at the bass response. "You should charge people to hang out down here," he joked, but I could tell he was genuinely impressed. The afternoon became an impromptu party. My cousins, who had been drifting around the house looking for entertainment, suddenly had somewhere they actually wanted to be. The basement, which had always been the forgotten space, became the center of attention. Jake kept trying to dominate the gaming setup, but for once, he wasn't the only one with access to premium entertainment options. Emma was mixing drinks at the bar area I'd created. Mike was controlling the music through the sound system, and my younger cousins were sprawled on the comfortable seating, actually talking to each other instead of staring at Crass. Their phones. "I can't believe you did this yourself," Emma said, admiring the bathroom that was nicer than the one in her apartment. "You're like a secret home renovation expert." "I just watched a lot of YouTube videos," I said, but I was glowing from the praise. After years of feeling like the overlooked cousin, the one who worked too much and visited too little, I was suddenly the center of positive attention. As the afternoon progressed, it became clear that nobody wanted to go back upstairs. The main living room, where family gatherings usually centered, was abandoned in favor of my basement creation. Even when Mom called down to let us know dinner was ready, there was a general reluctance to leave. "Can we eat down here?" Mike asked. "This is way more comfortable than the dining room." "The dining room is for Christmas Eve dinner," I said, but I was secretly thrilled that my space had become the preferred gathering spot. During dinner, the conversation kept returning to the basement transformation. My parents were clearly proud but also somewhat bewildered by what I'd accomplished. My aunts and uncles, who had been skeptical about my renovation project, were now asking detailed questions about contractors and costs. "You know, Sarah," my Uncle Tom said, "if you ever want to change careers, you could probably make good money flipping houses." "She's got a real eye for design," Aunt Linda added. "That space looks like something from a magazine." Jake was notably quiet during these exchanges, picking at his food and occasionally glancing in my direction. I wondered if he was beginning to realize that his casual takeover of my childhood room had inadvertently prompted me to create something far superior to what he'd claimed. After dinner, the migration back to the basement was immediate and unanimous. The upstairs living room, with its dated furniture and limited seating, couldn't compete with the comfortable, modern space I'd created below. Even the adults wandered down to take a closer look at what I'd accomplished. "This is really impressive, honey," Dad said, running his hand along the bar counter I'd installed. "The workmanship is professional quality." "I'm still figuring out some of the details," I said, but I was pleased by his assessment. His approval meant more than I'd expected. As the evening progressed, it became clear that my basement had fundamentally shifted the dynamics of our family gathering. Instead of everyone scattered throughout the house, watching different TVs, or scrolling through their phones in isolation, we were all gathered in one space that encouraged conversation and interaction. The seating arrangement I'd chosen promoted face-to-face conversation rather than everyone staring at screens. The lighting created a warm, intimate atmosphere that made people want to linger. The entertainment options were sophisticated enough to keep everyone engaged without being overwhelming. Most importantly, it was a space that felt separate from the complicated family dynamics that usually dominated our gatherings. Down in the basement, away from the memories and expectations that filled the rest of the house, we could just be ourselves. Jake spent most of the evening on the gaming setup, but even he seemed to appreciate that this was a communal space rather than his personal domain. He actually invited his younger cousins to join him for multiplayer games, something I'd never seen him do before. "This is so much better than being stuck upstairs," Emma whispered to me as we watched the younger cousins try to master the latest racing game. Usually by now someone would be fighting over the remote or complaining about being bored. She was right. The basement had become a neutral zone where everyone could find something they enjoyed without stepping on anyone else's preferences. The multiple seating areas meant people could have different conversations without disturbing each other. The various entertainment options meant nobody had to compromise on what they wanted to do. As the night wound down and people started heading home, the compliments continued. My cousins made me promise to host future gatherings in the basement. My aunts and uncles asked for recommendations on contractors and suppliers. Even my parents seemed to be seeing me differently, recognizing a capability and determination they hadn't noticed before. "You really outdid yourself," Mom said, as she helped me clean up the few dishes that had made their way downstairs. "I had no idea you were so handy." "Neither did I admitted. "But it was fun to learn." Jake was the last to leave the basement, reluctantly abandoning the gaming setup to head back to his claimed territory upstairs. As he reached the door, he turned back to look at the space one more time. "This is really cool," he said. And for the first time since I'd arrived, his tone was genuinely respectful rather than dismissive. "You did an amazing job." "Thanks," I said, surprised by how much his acknowledgement meant to me. After everyone had gone to bed, I sat alone in my creation, processing what had happened. In 2 weeks, I had transformed not just a physical space, but my entire position within the family dynamic. I was no longer the cousin who got displaced and accommodated. I was the cousin who created something remarkable. The next morning, Christmas Day, brought the real test. The extended family gathering included not just cousins, but aunts, uncles, and family friends who hadn't seen the basement transformation. The reactions were uniformly positive, though more importantly, the space proved its worth as a gathering spot. While the adults lingered over coffee in the dining room, sharing gossip and catching up on family news, the younger generation naturally gravitated toward the basement. It became the kids' table equivalent for adults, a place where we could relax and enjoy each other's company without the formal expectations that came with upstairs gatherings. "Sarah, you have to give me the name of your contractor," my Aunt Carol said, examining the bathroom fixtures with obvious envy. "My husband has been promising to renovate our basement for 5 years." "I did most of it myself," I said, enjoying the surprise on her face. "Yourself? But this looks professional." "YouTube University," I said with a grin. "That and a lot of determination." The day continued with a steady stream of visitors to the basement, each person wanting to see the transformation they'd heard about. I found myself giving impromptu tours, explaining my design choices and renovation process to an audience that was genuinely interested and impressed. Even more gratifying was watching how the space changed the social dynamics. Conversations that might have been stilted or awkward in the formal living room became relaxed and genuine in the comfortable basement setting. The industrial-chic aesthetic seemed to put people at ease, encouraging them to kick off their shoes and settle in for real conversations. Jake appeared periodically throughout the day, clearly torn between his claimed territory upstairs and the superior entertainment auctions in the basement. Each time he came down, he seemed to linger a little longer, increasingly reluctant to return to the isolation of my former bedroom. By evening, when the formal gift exchange was scheduled to take place in the living room, there was a general resistance to leaving the basement. The comfortable seating, perfect lighting, and relaxed atmosphere had become the preferred environment for family bonding. "Why don't we bring the presents down here?" my youngest cousin suggested. "There's more room, and the seating is way better." It was a radical suggestion that would have been unthinkable in previous years, but looking around at the faces of my family members, I could see genuine enthusiasm for the idea. The basement, which had been forgotten storage space just weeks ago, was now being considered as the site for our most important family tradition. "It's not very traditional," Mom said, but her tone suggested she was considering it. "The basement is beautiful," Aunt Linda said diplomatically. "And it really is more comfortable than crowding into the living room." The decision was made democratically, and I watched with amazement as my family relocated their most cherished tradition to the space I had created. The presents were moved downstairs, the seating was rearranged to accommodate everyone, and Christmas gift exchange happened in my basement for the first time in family history. The symbolism wasn't lost on me. The space that had been dismissed as unimportant was now hosting our most important gathering. The cousin who had been displaced was now at the center of family attention. The room that had required my personal investment and effort was now the backdrop for creating new family memories. As we sat in a circle on my carefully chosen furniture, surrounded by the industrial-chic aesthetic I had created, passing around gifts and sharing stories, I felt a satisfaction that went far beyond the pleasure of a successful renovation project. I had proved something important, not just to my family, but to myself. When Jake opened his gift, a new gaming headset, that would presumably enhance his experience in my former bedroom, he looked around the basement appreciatively before making his thank you speech. "This is really cool," he said, gesturing at the space around us. "Sarah, you totally transformed this place. It's like having a whole separate house down here." The acknowledgement was public and genuine, and I could see my parents exchanging pleased glances. Their daughter had not only handled the bedroom situation gracefully, but had created something that enhanced the entire family experience. As the evening wound down and people began the process of gathering their gifts and preparing to leave, the compliments continued. But, more importantly, the plans for future gatherings all seemed to center around the basement. "New Year's Eve," someone suggested. "The next birthday party." The Super Bowl gathering that had traditionally been held at Uncle Tom's house. "We should make this the official family party spot," Emma said, and there was general agreement around the room. I had not only reclaimed my place in the family dynamic, I had elevated it. The basement renovation had become more than just a response to being displaced from my childhood room. It had become a statement about my capabilities, my creativity, and my value as a family member. Later that night, after everyone had gone home and the house had returned to its usual quiet, I sat alone in the basement reviewing what had happened over the past 2 weeks. The transformation had been physical, but it had also been personal and social. I had taken a situation that could have been humiliating and turned it into an opportunity for growth and recognition. Instead of fighting for what had been taken from me, I had created something better. Instead of accepting the role of displaced family member, I had established myself as the family member who could create gathering spaces that brought people together. The basement renovation had cost me several $1,000s and 2 weeks of intensive physical labor, but it had returned dividends that couldn't be measured in money. I had gained confidence, respect, and a skill set I hadn't known I possessed. Most importantly, I had gained a space that was entirely my own, created according to my vision and standards. Jake's presence in my former bedroom no longer felt like a violation. It felt like the catalyst that had prompted me to create something far superior to what I had lost. The childhood room, with its dated furniture and adolescent memories, couldn't compare to the sophisticated adult space I had designed and built. As I prepared for bed in the comfortable basement suite, I reflected on how dramatically my relationship with this house had changed. When I had arrived 2 weeks ago, I had felt like a guest in my own childhood home. Now I felt like I had created a home within a home, a space that was entirely mine while still being part of the family gathering place. The separate entrance meant I could maintain my independence while still being present for family activities. The sophisticated design meant I could entertain friends and colleagues who visited, showcasing not just a nice basement, but a demonstration of my capabilities and taste. Most importantly, the project had revealed aspects of myself that I hadn't known existed. The ability to envision a dramatic transformation and execute it successfully. The persistence to work through physical challenges and technical problems. The design sense to create a space that was both beautiful and functional. The next morning, I woke up in my new space, feeling more rested and content than I had in years. The quality of the mattress I had chosen was superior to anything I had slept on, including the bed in my city apartment. The soundproofing created by the basement location meant I had slept undisturbed by Jake's late-night gaming sessions or early morning activities upstairs. Over breakfast, my parents were still processing the previous day's events and the positive response to the basement transformation. "You know, honey," Mom said as she poured coffee, "I think you might have started something. Your Aunt Carol is already talking about renovating their basement, and Uncle Tom wants to know if you'd be willing to consult on their family room project." The idea of leveraging my newfound renovation skills into additional projects was appealing. Not necessarily as a career change, but as a way to help family members while continuing to develop my abilities. "I'd be happy to help," I said, surprised by how much I meant it. It was really satisfying to see a project through from start to finish. "Your father and I have been talking," Mom continued, "and we'd like to help you finish any details you haven't gotten to yet. The basement is such an asset to the house now, and we appreciate all the work you put into it." The offer was generous and appreciated, but I realized I didn't want to change anything about the space. It was complete in a way that felt satisfying and personal. Any modifications would need to be driven by my own preferences rather than suggestions from others. "I think it's pretty much finished," I said. "But I appreciate the offer." Jake appeared for breakfast looking slightly disheveled, clearly having stayed up late gaming in his temporary domain. He poured cereal and sat down across from me, studying my face as if trying to figure something out. "So, are you going to keep the basement set up after you go back to the city?" he asked. It was a good question, and one I'd been considering. The renovation had been prompted by the immediate need for a place to stay during my visit, but it had evolved into something much more significant. "I think so," I said. "It's nice to have a space here that's mine." "That makes sense," he said, stirring his cereal thoughtfully. "It's a really cool space, way cooler than upstairs." The admission was significant coming from someone who had claimed my childhood room without apparent concern for my feelings. It suggested a growing awareness that his temporary arrangement might not be as advantageous as he had initially assumed. "You're welcome to hang out down there whenever you want," I said, meaning it. The basement was large enough to accommodate both his gaming interests and my need for personal space. The remainder of my visit passed peacefully, with most family activities naturally gravitating toward the basement. The space had become the de facto gathering spot, preferred by everyone for its comfort and modern amenities. Jake continued to sleep in my former bedroom, but he spent most of his waking hours in the basement, clearly preferring the superior entertainment options and comfortable seating. When it came time to return to the city, I found myself reluctant to leave. The basement had become more than just a renovation project. It had become a retreat that I looked forward to returning to. The prospect of future visits to the family home was no longer tinged with the complicated emotions that had characterized my relationship with the house since childhood. "You know you're always welcome here," Mom said as she helped me pack. "And now you have such a nice space to stay in." "I know," I said, looking around the basement one final time before leaving. "I'm already looking forward to coming back." The drive back to the city gave me time to process what had happened over the past 2 weeks. I had arrived feeling displaced and unimportant, and I was leaving feeling accomplished and valued. The basement renovation had been a tangible project with measurable results, but its impact on my self-confidence and family relationships was equally significant. Back in my city apartment, which suddenly felt smaller and less impressive than I remembered, I found myself thinking about future projects, the skills I had developed, and the satisfaction I had experienced were too valuable to abandon. I started researching weekend renovation projects that could enhance my own living space. More importantly, I had gained a new perspective on family dynamics and the importance of creating rather than simply reacting. When faced with a situation that felt unfair or disappointing, I had chosen to build something positive rather than nurse grievances or fight battles that couldn't be won. The basement renovation had cost me money, time, and physical effort, but it had returned rewards that far exceeded the investment. I had gained a beautiful space, enhanced family relationships, and discovered capabilities I hadn't known I possessed. Most importantly, I had learned that the best response to feeling displaced is often to create a new place where you truly belong. 3 months later, I received a text from Jake that made me smile. "Hey, do you mind if I use the basement for a party next weekend? My friends want to see the space everyone's been talking about." I replied immediately. "Of course. Just clean up after yourselves." His response came quickly. "Thanks. And hey, I've been thinking about moving out of your old room. It doesn't seem right to keep it when you built something so much better downstairs." I stared at the message for a long moment, processing the gesture. He was offering to return what had been taken from me, but I realized I no longer wanted it back. The childhood bedroom, with its dated furniture and adolescent memories, couldn't compare to the sophisticated space I had created. "Keep the room," I texted back. "I prefer the basement anyway." And I meant it. The basement had become more than just a place to stay during family visits. It had become a symbol of what I could accomplish when I focused on creating rather than dwelling on what I had lost. It was a reminder that sometimes the best response to displacement is to build something better than what you had before. The story of how I turned my family's forgotten basement into a luxury loft had become part of our family lore, told and retold at gatherings and shared with friends who were considering their own renovation projects. But for me, it remained a personal victory that had less to do with interior design than with discovering my own resilience and creativity. Every time I returned to visit, the basement welcomed me home to a space that was entirely my own creation. The sophisticated design, comfortable furnishings, and modern amenities provided a retreat that enhanced, rather than complicated, my relationship with my family. I had not only found a solution to the immediate problem of where to sleep during visits, I had created a permanent sanctuary that would serve me for years to come. 6 months after the initial renovation, I found myself making weekend trips home specifically to enjoy the basement space. It had become my personal retreat center, a place where I could decompress from city life while still maintaining connections with my family. The separate entrance meant I could arrive and settle in without disrupting anyone else's routine, then emerge for family time when I felt ready for social interaction. The basement had also become a source of ongoing projects and improvements. I added a small kitchenette along one wall, complete with a compact refrigerator, microwave, and coffee station. The addition made the space completely self-sufficient and eliminated any need to coordinate with kitchen activities upstairs. I could prepare simple meals and snacks without interfering with family routines or feeling like I was imposing on shared spaces. The success of the basement renovation had also spurred changes throughout the rest of the house. My parents, inspired by what I had accomplished, began updating other areas with fresh paint, new lighting, and modern furniture. The entire house began to feel more contemporary and welcoming, but the basement remained the crown jewel of the transformation. Jake eventually did move out of my childhood bedroom, finding his own apartment closer to a job he'd finally managed to keep for more than 6 months. His departure was amicable, and he made a point of thanking me for letting him stay as long as he had. More importantly, he acknowledged that my basement creation had shown him what was possible when you invested effort and creativity into improving your living situation. "I never thought about making a place really mine before," he told me during his move-out weekend. "Watching you transform that basement made me realize I could do more than just exist in a space." His new apartment, while modest, reflected genuine effort to create a comfortable and personalized environment. He'd painted the walls, arranged furniture thoughtfully, and even added some plants. The gaming setup was still prominent, but it was integrated into a space that looked like an adult lived there, rather than a teenager who'd never learned to take care of his environment. The transformation of the basement had ripple effects throughout the extended family as well. My Aunt Carol did renovate her basement, consulting with me throughout the process and creating a beautiful family room that became the centerpiece of their home. Uncle Tom updated his family room with design ideas borrowed from my industrial-chic aesthetic. Even my grandmother, who lived in a small condo, asked for help rearranging her furniture and adding better lighting to make her space more functional and attractive. I found myself becoming the unofficial family renovation consultant, helping relatives plan projects and offering advice based on my basement experience. It was satisfying to share what I'd learned and to see other family members gain confidence in their ability to improve their living situations. The basement also became a regular hosting venue for family celebrations. Birthday parties, graduation celebrations, and holiday gatherings naturally centered around the comfortable, modern space I had created. The superior seating, excellent sound system, and sophisticated lighting made it the obvious choice for events that required accommodating multiple generations with different preferences and energy levels. 2 years after the original renovation, I made the decision to extend my remote work arrangement and spend more time at the family home. The basement had become comfortable enough to serve as a home office, and the peaceful environment actually enhanced my productivity compared to my cramped city apartment. I added a proper desk area with excellent lighting and ergonomic seating, transforming part of the space into a professional workspace that rivaled any corporate office. High-speed internet, multiple monitors, and quality video conferencing equipment made it possible to maintain my career while enjoying the benefits of the retreat space I had created. The arrangement worked beautifully for everyone involved. My parents enjoyed having me around more regularly without feeling like they were accommodating a long-term house guest. I could contribute to household expenses and maintenance while maintaining complete independence in my basement suite. The separate entrance meant I could maintain professional calls and meetings without disturbing family activities, while still being available for shared meals and family time when schedules aligned. The basement renovation had evolved from an emergency response to displacement into a long-term lifestyle choice that enhanced both my career and family relationships. The initial investment of time and money had paid dividends far beyond what I had originally imagined. 3 years later, when my company offered me a promotion that would require relocating to another city, I found myself hesitant to accept, despite the significant salary increase and career advancement opportunities. The basement had become more than just a living space. It had become a foundation for a lifestyle that balanced professional success with family connections and personal satisfaction. After lengthy consideration and discussion with my parents, I made the decision to negotiate a permanent remote work arrangement instead of relocating. The basement provided everything I needed for professional success, while the family connections and peaceful environment contributed to personal satisfaction that couldn't be replicated in another city. The decision proved to be wise. My work performance improved in the peaceful, personalized environment, leading to additional recognition and opportunities within the company. The lower cost of living compared to the city meant that my salary went further despite turning down the promotion. Most importantly, the daily satisfaction of living in a space I had created exactly to my specifications provided a foundation of contentment that enhanced every other aspect of my life. The basement continued to evolve as my needs and interests developed. I added a small library area with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and a reading nook with perfect natural light from the upgraded windows. A yoga and exercise area provided space for maintaining physical health without requiring gym memberships or travel time. Plants thrived in the carefully planned lighting, adding natural beauty and improving air quality. Each addition was carefully considered and expertly executed, building on the skills and confidence I had gained during the original renovation. The space became a showcase, not just of interior design principles, but of what could be accomplished when you committed to creating an environment that truly supported your lifestyle and goals. 5 years after the original Christmas visit that had started everything, I hosted a holiday party in the basement that included not just family, but colleagues and friends from various aspects of my life. The space easily accommodated 30 people, providing comfortable seating areas for different conversations, excellent acoustics for background music, and a sophisticated atmosphere that impressed everyone who attended. "I can't believe this used to be just a storage basement," one of my colleagues commented, admiring the exposed brick wall I had added during a recent update. "It looks like something from a design magazine." "It started as necessity," I told her, "but it became passion." That conversation crystallized something I had been thinking about for months. The basement renovation had revealed talents and interests that had shaped my life in ways I hadn't anticipated. The satisfaction of creating beautiful, functional spaces had become more than just a hobby. It had become a calling. 6 months later, I made the decision to transition from my marketing career to interior design and renovation consulting. The basement served as my portfolio piece, demonstrating my ability to transform challenging spaces into sophisticated, functional environments. The network of family and friends who had seen my work provided initial referrals and testimonials. The career transition was smoother than I had expected, largely because I had already established credibility through the basement project and subsequent family renovations. Clients were impressed not just by the quality of my work, but by my ability to understand and respond to their lifestyle needs and budget constraints. The basement remained my home base and office, perfectly suited for meeting with clients and showcasing design concepts. The separate entrance provided professional accessibility without compromising family privacy. The sophisticated aesthetic demonstrated my capabilities, while the practical functionality proved my understanding of how good design enhances daily life. 10 years after that Christmas visit when I found Jake in my childhood bedroom, I was running a successful design business from the basement space that had started as an emergency accommodation. The financial investment I had made in flooring, lighting, and furniture had returned exponentially through the career opportunities it had created and the lifestyle satisfaction it had provided. More importantly, the basement renovation had taught me fundamental lessons about responding to challenges with creativity rather than complaint. Instead of fighting to reclaim what had been taken from me, I had created something far better than what I had lost. Instead of accepting displacement as permanent defeat, I had used it as motivation to build something entirely my own. The basement had become legendary within our family and social circles, not just as an impressive renovation project, but as an example of what was possible when you refused to accept limitations and invested effort in creating the life you wanted. Friends regularly asked for tours, relatives brought houseguests to see the transformation, and potential clients often requested to visit the space that had launched my design career. But for me, the basement remained most significant as a daily reminder of my own capabilities and resilience. Every morning when I woke up in the space I had created, surrounded by furniture I had chosen and design elements I had installed, I was reminded that I had the power to shape my environment and, by extension, my life according to my own vision and standards. The childhood bedroom that had been given to Jake without my input was eventually converted into my parents' home office, painted neutral colors and furnished with practical desk and storage solutions. It was a perfectly adequate space that served its purpose without distinction or memorable character. The basement, by contrast, had become a masterpiece of personal expression and functional design that continued to evolve and improve with each passing year. It was a testament to what could be accomplished when displacement became motivation and creativity became action. As I prepared for bed each night in my basement sanctuary, surrounded by the sophisticated design elements and comfortable furnishings I had carefully selected and installed, I reflected on how dramatically my life had changed because of that one Christmas visit when I found my room occupied by someone else. What had felt like loss and displacement had become the catalyst for discovery and creation that had shaped my career, enhanced my family relationships, and provided a foundation of personal satisfaction that influenced every aspect of my life. The basement renovation had taught me that the best response to having something taken away wasn't to fight for its return, but to create something so much better that the original loss became irrelevant. It had shown me that limitations often contained opportunities for those willing to look beyond immediate frustration to long-term possibilities. Most importantly, it had proven that I had capabilities and talents I hadn't known existed, waiting to be discovered through necessity and developed through persistence. The basement had become more than just a beautiful living space. It had become the foundation for a life built according to my own specifications and dreams.